Okay, here we go. We are learning Leila Nishmas Mendel Mariam Bas Kalman Ruben and Neshama Shem Aliyah. We are at Darash Hahug Lila. Okay, Darash Hahug Lila. It's I don't know, like 12 lines down. Everyone have it? Darash Hahug Lila. It's like if you're in the art scroll, it's 88A1. It's like the last few words on the page. Okay, so we're gonna start getting into the Gadatza, but still gonna tie into the Rav Yossi Rabbana Machlokas Darsha Huglila Aleid Rav Chisda. Okay, a certain Galilean, we don't know his name. It's interesting why he does that, but basically he stood in front of Rav Chisda and he made the following drasha: Brich Rachmana, blessed is Hashem. Do you have Aryan Tlisai, who gave the Torah of thirds? Am Tlisai, to a people of thirds. Al Yidei Tlisai, through a person born third to his mother. Biyom Tlisai, on the third day of abstinence, b'yarchet lisai, during the third month of the year. Okay, so let's just unpack these. So what does it mean, the Torah of thirds? So some understand Torah Nevi'im Ksuvim, that's what it means, the Torah of thirds. Others understand that the idea of thirds is that it's made up of three different elements. There is Chukim, Mishpatim, and Chukim, Mishpatim, Eidos, Chukim, Mishpatim, like the three different types of mitzvos that are in the Torah. So a different way of understanding why we call the Torah the thirds. To a people of thirds, that means that we're divided into three categories: Kohen, Levi, Yisrael. Al Yidei Tlisai, through the third born, meaning there's Aaron, Miriam, and then Moshe. Okay, Biyom Tlisai, on the third day of abstinence. Okay, who does that go like? Third day that there are 3 days of abstinence. Rav Yossi or the Rabbanan? It goes like one of the earlier views of the Rabbanan, that there's 3 days of abstinence, right? Definitely Rav Yossi had a shorter amount. B'yarchit Lisai, on the third month. The emphasis on the third, a lot of discussion, a little bit mystical, but some understand that the idea of threes is that there's something, there's a pasuk that speaks about the chut hamishulash, that there's a rope that is made into thirds, is something very strong. Like Hashem Dafka wanted to give the Torah on revolving around thirds, in the sense that shows its strength, shows it's something which is not going to be easily ripped away, and something which is strong. Or you have something which is already built on, you have like 1, okay, it's weak, 2, it's weak. When something is 3, then already it has a certain strength, and therefore that's the emphasis of the threes. But the bottom line is, from the statement, what do you see? That the Torah was given on the third day of abstinence, Kaman K'Rabbanan, that goes like the Rabbanan, and this is the final statement about which opinion, and basically telling us that it's the third day of abstinence. There are 3 days of abstinence. And again, that goes like one of the views of the Rabbanan that we saw earlier. And therefore the Gemara concludes over here in that discussion about how many days of abstinence there were. Now, as I pointed out earlier, this discussion about how many days of abstinence has direct ramifications to how many days we wait before starting counting the Shiva Nikiyim. The 5 days of waiting revolve around this halacha. The 5 days of waiting revolve around a concern that if there was intimacy right before a woman began her period, then the potential semen that's going to emit is going to uproot her ability to count 7 clean days, because that semen that is emitted is something which is going to cause her to become tamea, and therefore we practically, the Shulchan Aruch rules that we wait 5 days, or according to Ashkenaz, we wait 5 days, and that's based on these 3 periods of time, based on a potential that one of them that it started bein hashmashos in between 2 days, and therefore we kind of spread it out to 5 days. So that that is. Okay, so basically we wait there's 3 days of abstinence. Sorry, let me just get my bearings. So what do we have over here? So basically, so on the third day of abstinence, okay, this by saying it's on the third day of abstinence, this is saying that meaning that they only were abstinent 2 days. Right. In other words, what is this telling us? If you say it happened on the third day of abstinence, that means that means they only waited 2 days, and on the third day, right, it was 3 days from when they started being abstinent, right? So this goes like the Rabbanan, who basically have the month starting a day later on Monday, right? According to Rav Yossi, the month started on Sunday, right? And there are 3 full days of abstinence, and then you had the giving the Torah, right? Right? Abstinence started Wednesday, there's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then the giving the Torah. So we rule practically, halacha l'maisa, we rule like Rav Yossi when it comes to the waiting of days. In other words, the whole 5-day waiting is based on Rav Yossi, based on the fact that there are 3 full days of abstinence, not like the Rabbanan. What is odd, though, is that according to Rav Yossi, so again, we paskin 5 days, which is based on Rav Yossi, who holds you need 3 full days of abstinence, which means according to Rav Yossi, what day was Shavuos actually, what day did Matan Torah take place? If Sunday was the first day of the month, according to Rav Yossi, and we rule like him in regarding the 5 days, so Shavuos on the 7th day of the month. But guess what? What day do we celebrate Shavuos? On the 6th day of the month, right? So like the Rabbanan. So there is like this discrepancy. On the one hand, when it comes to the laws of Tumah, we're passing like Rav Yossi, okay? And therefore we wait 3 days. When it comes to halachas of Tumah, we wait 3 days. But when it comes to when we actually celebrate Shavuos, we seemingly are going like the Rabbanan who argue that that the month began on Monday, in which case Shavuos was actually on the 6th. How we reconcile this discrepancy, we're not going to get into, but it is a good question. Okay, fine. Now we're going to get a little bit more into the Agadah. Okay, so the pasuk says they stood at the foot of the mountain, but the words betachtis really actually means under, right? This is the famous observation that Amr Avdimi Bar Chama Bar Chasa, right? The fact that it doesn't say they stood at the foot of the mountain. Betachtis means tachas, means under. They stood under the mountain. So Rabbi Avdimi Bar Chama Bar Chasa says, Melamich Kafakadosh Baruch Hu Aleim Esahar Kagigis, that Hashem covered them as if it was an upturned vat, like a barrel. Okay, for Amar Lahem, and Hashem said to the Jewish people, Imatem mekabel matorah mutav. If you accept the Torah, great. Vimlav, and if you don't, sham tehei kvuraschem, there you will be buried. Okay, so what does that mean? That there, what in the world's going on? A few things, right? First of all, the Jewish people already accepted the Torah. Why is Hashem going ahead and holding the Torah, basically threatening them at this point? Second of all, a threat. So it's just a little bit strange, right? First, the Jewish people said Nasav Nishma, right? So he said, we'll do it. And then he said, okay, you better do it. We just said, we'll do it. What's going on? Why would Hashem go ahead and threaten the Jewish people at this point? So the Maharal explains that Hashem is trying to convey to the Jewish people as follows, trying to convey to them, yes, you accepted it, but you have to recognize that the receiving of the Torah is something which is not something which is so fundamental to the existence of the world that there has to be a sense of like, this is not just a matter of your voluntary, I accept it, I want it. Like sometimes we do things and okay, it's okay, we want it, we're okay with it. I'd like to do the Torah. It's like a choice. It's not a choice. Yes, you did choose to do it, but you have to recognize that the existence of the Torah is not a choice. It's not like a nice thing. It's not like I'll just by way of illustration, example, and soapbox. Okay, so very often I'll hear people say like, I want my children to, when it comes to like Judaism, I want my children to be able to make the choice for themselves. Are they into it? I want my children to be able to choose if they want Judaism or not. I don't want to force them, right? And we would never say that about, so I'm not going to impose any laws on them, and they're going to choose, right? Okay, that's, so I don't know, I hear that often. No one would ever say, I want my child to choose if, I want my child to see for themselves, like if poison is a good thing, if running across the street is a good thing, right? Why not? Because running across the street or poison, like that's something where I feel the impact and it's dangerous, right? We don't see Torah, sometimes people don't see Torah the same reality, in the sense that if we keep mitzvos, it's going to impact our lives. We do Avera, it's going to like completely destroy our lives, our spiritual lives, but it's going to completely destroy us. And so what Hashem is trying to convey, this is not like a choice. It's not like, if you want it, great, you chose to it, cool. And if you choose not to, it, cool also. No, you have to recognize this is integral to your existence. And therefore this notion of holding the mountain over them is to convey to them the fact that this is not like a choice. This is something which is fundamental, which is critical, and is just as dangerous if you don't accept this as basically going ahead and just jumping under a mountain, which would be suicidal, which is something you're not going to do. Similarly, the Torah also has to be so fundamental, so integral to your life. That's the idea of holding the mountain over them. That's how the Maharal understands it. There's another approach for which you find a number of places where they all talk about the fact that the Jewish people, when they accepted the Torah Sheb Biksav. And some say that's the words Nasa V'nishma. Like V'nishma is like whatever we hear. Yeah, Torah Shebiksav is like, okay, we call it read Torah Shebiksav, we understand it. But they didn't accept Torah Shebal Peh. That was the issue. They didn't accept Torah Shebal Peh. And so what's happening over here is Hashem is saying, and this is the approach of Ben Yoyada, he says that when Hashem held the mountain, he points out that doesn't just say Hashem held the mountain over them, it said Kigigis. What's a Gigas? A Gigas is something which stores a ton of stuff in it, right? A Gigas is like a vat, a barrel. And what Hashem is trying to convey to the Jewish people is that it's not enough to accept the Torah Shebiksav, because the Torah Shebal Peh, you have to recognize that every single word of Torah Shebiksav is a receptacle. It has so much in it, right? It's not just like Bereshis Bara Elokeim or Yivzachar Yom HaShabbos Lekacho. Each word is like a barrel, right? The idea of the barrel, that's why I specifically have that connotation, is to indicate the fact the Torah is packed in, is loaded. You need the Torah Shebal Peh as well. And that's why specifically Hashem at the mountain is telling them, he holds it over like a barrel, saying that you can't just accept it on externally. There's so much inside of it, which you have to recognize that's inside of it as well. That's another approach. The third approach, which I'll mention, I think, is the Ran's approach. Yeah, the Ran's approach. He says the emphasis is on Sham Tei Kuvuraschem, is that you'll be buried there, meaning outside of Eretz Yisrael, and meaning the original giving of the Torah. Actually, does it? Yeah. The Ran. Sorry, let's just move. Okay, we'll hold off on the Ran. Let's see the Ran. We're going to get to the Ran in a moment. Yeah.
So by that, he's saying, don't take it literally.
Correct. They're all
showing you this image of something suspended. It's not on top of your heads.
according to both these approaches.
Symbolic, right?
It's symbolic, meaning it's a symbolic message, I would say. Yes, correct. It wasn't like an actual coercion of threat of death at this point. It was more a symbolic, message to them.
But the image that they saw was not of something over their heads. In the second interpretation, the image that they saw was something suspended before them.
I guess so, although the Torah does say that kaf aleim har kagigis, so it does sound like it was over their heads, but the emphasis is less about it being over their heads, more about what the thing is.
The Torah says Tati Dahar, is what it is.
Yeah, Tati Sahar. Tati Sahar at the bottom
The Gigis
of
is
the mountain, which we always interpret that literally, well, they were standing at the bottom of the mountain.
Right.
I'm just wondering whether there is that difference also between.
Right, I'm not sure. You're right. It's certainly not an integral part of it, but the Gemara also does say that it was over their heads, so that's where I'm not 100% sure. Okay, so Amar Rav Acha bar Yaakov mikan modzar Rabba L'Raisa. So basically, based on this, the fact that there was this coercion of sorts, this would be a justification in a court of law. If Hashem were to go ahead and accuse us and say, hey, you didn't keep the Torah, we could say, well, what do you mean you're forced to keep the Torah? If a person puts a gun to my head and says, sign your house away, then it's not a good sale, right? So Hashem threatened us. Amar Rava, Afal Pikain. So this is where the Ran comes in. The Ran asks on this, what are you talking about? You see throughout the entire Tanakh, Hashem's basically yelling at the Jewish people to keep the Torah. So obviously it wasn't a good excuse. Meaning if it really was a good excuse, then why isn't it used as an excuse? So what the Ran understands is that what it was a good excuse for is outside of Eretz Yisrael. In other words, when the Jewish people accept the Torah, when they said Nas V'Nishma, they accepted the Torah, but there was a notion that this was going to lead them to Eretz Yisrael. Okay, and then, but outside of Eretz Yisrael, there was no notion of keeping the Torah. Okay, then comes along Hashem and says, no, Sham Tevik V'Raschem, that even outside of Eretz Yisrael, there's going to be punishments if you don't keep the Torah. That's why specifically the terms of Sham Tevik V'Raschem, outside of Israel, in the desert, you're going to die if you don't keep this, implying that you have to keep the Torah even outside of Eretz Yisrael, but there it's coercion. Right? And therefore, the only thing that they accepted willfully was the Torah in Eretz Yisrael. Outside of Eretz Yisrael, there was not an acceptance, and comes along Rava and says, Al Pikein Hadr Kablu Me'achashverosh, nevertheless accept the Torah again in the days of Achashverosh, Chsiv Kimu V'Kiblu, HaYehudim, Kimu Masha Kiblu Kvar. They accepted the Torah which they established in the days of Achashverosh, the Torah that they accepted already in the days of Moshe. Right? By the way, there's part of the background on the entire story of the Purim story, and that is that there's this big question. Do the Jewish people have to keep the Torah? Right? It takes place right after the first exile, right? The Babylonians exiled us, and there's a big question: do we have to keep the Torah now? Like, who says? The Torah was given to us for a nation in the land of Israel, and there's a major question. Maybe we should just assimilate at that point, and then it's specifically at that point that they go ahead and accept the Torah again. That's the end of the Purim story, is that they go ahead and accept the Torah again. Okay, Amar Chizkiah. Yeah.
It doesn't seem to. I didn't see anywhere an awareness previously that the Torah only depended upon being in the land of Israel. That wasn't. I'm taking you out of Mitzrayim to give you the Torah. I'm not giving you the Torah for later.
Yeah, but keep in mind, a lot of the Torah revolves around mitzvos Yish Eretz Yisrael, and this you look throughout Tanakh when they go into exile. This is a matter of discussion. Cheskel, and they say, okay, Hashem left us, we're done, and basically, which is a very logical idea. Meaning the notion that the Jewish people have an identity independent of a land is a very radical idea. It's a radical idea. So I mean, it's almost like some would argue it's Davar Pashat that Israel and Torah would go hand in hand. It's a society-based thing, and comes along, all of a sudden we have this novel idea. Oh, keep the Torah outside of Israel. Who says? Right? Who says? It's just like it's a novel idea, and that would seem to be again many.
It was given outside.
It was given outside. Yeah. So
given outside, how could it be dependent?
Right, and that's okay, and that's where the Kafaleim Harkigigas. It's given outside, but it's given certainly there. The goal was to be in Israel in a few months. It wasn't. Okay. Amr Chizkiah, my dechsev mishamayim ishmata din eretz yara v'shakta. From heaven you made judgment. The Torah was heard. Okay, the earth became afraid and grew calm. Okay, it's very interesting pasuk in Chizkiah. Ask the Gemara, Yara lama shakta. Why is if it became afraid, why did it grow calm? If im shakta lama yara, if it grew calm, why did it become afraid? Those two things don't go together. When you're afraid, you're not calm. When you're calm, you're not afraid. So el betchila yara, in the beginning, there was fear. Okay, and then there was calm. So what's this mean? For lama yara, why was the world afraid? It says the world was afraid, and then it grew calm. By all the other psukim, at the end of the giving at the end of each day, it says Yom Chamishi, Yom Shlishi. By the sixth day, it says Hashishi. Hey Yisrael Lamali. Why does it have an extra hey hashishi? Malamish Yisna Kadosh Baruch Hu in Ma'aseh Bereshis. Okay, because to tell you there's something special about the sixth day, that Hashem made a stipulation, okay, with creation. If the Jewish people accept the Torah, you will endure. I'll return you to nothingness. Okay, so basically the idea is that on the sixth day of the Hashishi is a reference to the sixth day of Sivan, the day the Torah was given, and Hashem basically told the world that there is something, you're not complete until Matan Torah. Until the giving of the Torah, the world is on wobbly feet, and only if the Jewish people accept the Torah, great. If not, the world will be completely destroyed. Rav Chaim Volozhin in the Sefer Nefesh HaChaim, which talks about the greatness of the Torah, discusses the fact that the Torah is not just a one-time thing, that when we accept the Torah, that's what ensured the world to exist, but rather the entirety of the world, and he proves from many sections in the Zohar, is dependent on learning Torah. And without learning Torah, he suggests one of the reasons, I think he says this explicitly, is that, that we have these time zones, and Jews are all over the world, is that if we wouldn't have people learning Torah in every single place, the world would be destroyed, because the world cannot exist without Torah. This is very relevant so most of the time you say, okay, there's people learning 24/7, but there's one day a year that you can't. What's that? It's Tisha B'Av. So very soon, when we're going to have our Amud Yomi shir, we're going to be literally possibly keeping the world standing, in the sense that there are people who cannot be learning at certain times, and we learn at whatever time, and there's like 7 hours later or whatever, 8 hours later, there are people who are not learning. That's literally keeping the world afloat. That's what Yom HaShishi is teaching us, that creation is truly, it's like the fuel that keeps the world going. The Torah is like at the center of creation, and basically that's what gives it the energy, and so it's a big deal. Okay, Darash Rav Simai, next Amud, next page. When the Jewish people said, we will do it, then we will hear, 600,000 angels came to each Jew, and attached 2 crowns to each Jew. One crown corresponding to Nasa, and one corresponding to we will hear. But then when they sinned with the golden calf, 1,200,000 angels of destruction came and removed those crowns. The children of Israel, the pasuk says, were stripped of their jewelry from Mount Chorev, which is Sinai. And so again, when they sent out Mishma, they got these crowns. When they sinned to the golden calf, these crowns were removed. Now, it's interesting to note that it's not the same amount of angels coming down each time. 600,000 angels come and give 2 crowns each. But when it comes to removing it, you need an angel for each crown. You have 1.2 million removing the crown. So the Mefarshim explained that when it comes to doing good, there is more of a natural connection to good in this world, and therefore angels of goodness are able to do much more. Angels of destruction, there's more of an effort. They're fighting against the world, they're fighting against the nature of the world, and therefore you need an angel for each to do the bad. Okay. Amar Rav Chama b'Rabbi Chanina b'Chorev To'anu b'Chorev Parku. They received the crowns at Chorev, which is a synonym for Sinai. B'Chorev Parku, at Chorev the crowns were taken off. B'Chorev Tanu, at Chorev they got the crowns. Get Amran, as we just said from the pasuk, B'Chorev Parku. At Chorev it was taken off. T'chsiv his nasav in Israel. The children of Israel were stripped of their jewelry. Amar Rabbi Yochanan v'Kulan Zacha Moshe Natalan. Moshe received all their crowns. Moshe, when the Jewish people lost their merits, Moshe actually received their spirituality. The pasuk immediately after says, Moshe yikach es ha'ohel. Moshe would take the tent. So what is it? What's the connection? Some just say it's juxtaposition between the two. Others point out that word ohel, the letters of ohel actually could refer to hilo. Hilo is like a halo. It's actually a term that you find in the book of Eov, that the crowns, or actually when we think of a crown, it's a halo of sorts, and Moshe took the halo of all the Jews. He received that merit. Okay, Amar Lakish, Hashem is going to return them to us. Shenemar, as it says, when there's redemption, there'll be everlasting joy upon their heads. Simcha sheme olam al rosham, the joy that was upon their heads long ago, they're going to receive again. Okay, Amar Rabbi Lazar, when the Jewish people said, we will do, and then we will hear, a voice rang out from heaven and said, Mi gila livanai razesh malache shars mishtam shembo. Hashem said, how in the world do they know to say nasa? And then nishma, this is a secret which the angels use. Okay, Dechsiv, Baruch Hashem malachav giburei koach, ose devaro, lishmoa bekol devaro. Okay, so first it's the Bereisha Ose. It says the angels do, V'hadu Lishmoa, and then they hear. So the Jewish people, by answering this way, Nasa v'Nishma, they were tapping into some angelic force. We'll talk about what this means in a moment. Amar Rav Chama Rabbi Chanina Ma'id Chsiv. What's the meaning of the pasuk? Tapuach ba'atzei hayar, like an apple among the trees of the forest. Lama nimshu is a pasuk in Shir Hashirim, which refers to the Jewish people as an apple. Lama nimshu Yisrael tapuach. Why are the Jewish people like an apple? Lomer lecha, to tell you ma tapuach zeh pirio kodem la'alav. When it comes to an apple, the fruit comes before the leaves. Okay, most fruits, the leaves come before the fruit, but when it comes to apples, the fruit comes before the leaves. So to the Jewish people had that backwards thing where the fruit comes before the leaves. One of the reasons we eat apples, by the way, on Rosh Hashanah is for this reason. We want to tap into this idea that we are not just the sweetness, but the idea that we want to be nasa before nishma. We want to be able to just run. Nasa before nishma means basically like, no matter what, we're doing this. I don't have to understand this. Sometimes we understand things, sometimes we don't understand things, and the Jewish people from the get-go, from the moment they received the Torah, or even before, we're basically saying we are like an apple. We don't always understand Hashem's ways. Nasa b'nishma, we basically accept to commit, to accomplish, and hopefully we'll be able to understand it. Okay, and one story which illustrates this: there was a Saddusi who saw Rava studying Gemara. V'yasva atzba'asa diyade tosei kara, and Rava put the fingers of his hands under his legs. And he was crushing them. Okay, his fingers were flowing with blood. In other words, he was so immersed in his learning that he was like, he was just like completely, not paying attention to what he was doing, and he's sitting on top of his fingers so hard, in such a strong fashion that he's actually bleeding out of his fingers. Okay, Amrle. But it's beautiful. I don't know. Sometimes you can see people so immersed in their learning, they're completely oblivious to the world around them, and it comes from a certain place of immersion. One example of someone like this, Rabbi Jonas Clary, he gives lectures around here, so we've had him in the shul. Remember, like in Ner Yisrael, you see him like just like walking up and down the aisles of the yeshiva, just completely oblivious to the world around him. He was just completely immersed in his learning, and it's a special thing. Most of us, are distractible, but when a person's really immersed, they're really immersed. But Rav was doing so to such a point that he literally has like blood coming out of his fingers. Amalei. The Sadducee said, "Ama peziza dekanmisu pumaychla ludnaichu." You're an impulsive people. You put their mouths before your ears. Akati b'fachu zuzai saichu kamisu. Just like you did that when you received the Torah, you're still completely impulsive. You're just like doing Torah, but it doesn't make any sense. It's hurting you. What are you doing? So bereishay ba'alahu chulu mashma. You should have listened, heard the commandments. Imatzisu kablisu. Whether you're able to accept it, if you low, and if you weren't lo kablisu, you shouldn't have accepted it. Like you guys are just completely impulsive people. Amalei Rava said, Anan, we go in the ways of complete faith. Ksiv ban, it says about us, Tumas Yisharim Tanchem, the perfect faith of the upright shall lead them. The faith of the upright shall lead them. Hanach Inshe, Desagan Malusa, people who go in the ways of perverseness. You are people who basically go in a perverted fashion. Subahu Veselef Bogdim Mishadim, the perverseness of faithless shall destroy them. Okay, so this story actually is very helpful in terms of illustrating what Nasav Nishma is really all about. Rav Kook says, just a beautiful thing. What is this whole secret of the angels, Nasav Nishma? He says, what's the idea? We will do and then we'll listen. He says, it's not just a commitment. He says, much deeper than that. It was the Jewish people at that moment when they said Nasav Nishma, what they were realizing is that Nasav is, I don't need to listen to the Torah. How could you say Nasav Nishma? Like, let's just pause for a second. It makes no sense. I'm going to do before I listen. Can't do it. Could you do me a favor? Sure, I'm there. I'm doing it right now. You can't. You got to listen before you can do it. Like, it's illogical. But that's what Rav is getting over here. This pasuk of the faith, the perfect faith shall lead them. That means there's something internal to the person to lead them. What the Jewish people realized at Har Sinai, says Rav Kook, is that they realized that the spirituality, the goodness, the Torah itself was inside them, that they could actually intuit the Torah. Nasa means, it wasn't just a commitment, it was saying we realize now that we have Torah inside of us, that we have this connection to God inside of us, that we are actually able to do Nasa. And that's what it's talking about over here, that a person will be guided by the goodness of themselves. What the Jewish people realized it's not just, okay, we're going to do all this stuff. It's that we are saying, we recognize that moment that we have an neshama. We recognize that moment that we have something inside of us which is able to propel us to do Torah, and that's the greatness of Nasa. That's the angelic thing. Meaning, an angel is intuitive. Just like, no one taught a beaver how to make a dam, right? It's intuitive, right? That's the Jewish people are saying, Nasa. We realize that Torah is intuitive to us. Sometimes we don't feel that way. Sometimes we feel like this is the least intuitive thing in the world. But the point is that what we have to recognize is that what our ancestors, tapped into at that moment is Nasa. Is the fact that just like the angels intuitively just do what's right, it's not a struggle. So too, the Jewish people realize at that point that the Torah, when we dig deep enough, is simply intuitive to us. It's just a part of our essence. It's not something we have to get externally from Hashem. Just like Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were able to keep the Torah according to the Midrashim intuitively, so too too, Nasa, we have the ability to do the same if we are able to, but just even if we don't always feel that way, to recognize that we have like this incredible amount of spirituality from within, and that's able to drive us and compel us and move us forward in Shmiras, in keeping the Torah. Have a great day.